And this is I said, this is the Spring Boot profiling concept. Those who have no experience about the Spring Boot profiling, just Google it, and I will try to here recap it. So again, the Spring Boot profiling means you have some prefix setup, like here you have some development, production, QA, relay, rail, and test. This is the prefix. You set it here, application properties files. When you packed it this application as a jar files, then inside jar file this resource is available. And externally, when you write external application properties file or external command line tools bat files, and it will overwrite the configuration, the host name, port number, based on which prefix you will set it here. So that's I try to show you maybe one example that will be help. I don't know where it is. One of the example. Sorry. Maybe not here. So you see the one of the example, like how can you externally configure those this is the you set the Java, you set the server port, local host, where your jar file located. If this is the production environment, you have possibilities. That's to set it here. So and then you have a database location, where is location. This is the Elasticsearch base, and then all the things together. So you write down this environmental setting variables and call the environmental variables where your available port, where you try to install your application, and this is where you get your jar files, maybe your jar file in your company Artifactory, and then you can take the jar file from the company Artifactory, or maybe you have a Maven central Artifactory, you can get from the Maven also. Just call the jar files and set this value and set which environment you try to install is automatically really professional way to do. And you set all the environmental settings, and then you have some just like call the environmental settings. You see the one of the example like Elasticsearch. That's I will show you later, part of my implementation. When your implementation done, deployment done, testing done, then you get the really clear pictures like that's way. So, and then after that you set the configuration. Just you set call the environmental vetting settings and set the path of the Java, and just simply standard jar file call. How can you run the jar files in your command modes? That's like, so I compact it as a professional way. Just now you just need to run this start.service cmd, and then you deploy the application, and then it's running. It's done very efficient, very professional way. And maybe you have different approach, like just write down your application the properties file, read the properties file from your hard drive, and then put it in. But here I just look like different approach, like I define my all the environmental variables or user variables, and call the user variables and run the jar files that's we define here, where take the jar files, where PC we try to install, which port are free, and the database connections, and then so on and so forth. Very simple, very professional. But I just I said I will show you every step when I start the deployment and installation, and then the testing of the application into your client machine. So you can directly install those applications into client machine and try to test to run that same test that you have it as a developer. That's I said I will show you later of the implementations. So you got the idea. The Redis configuration done, it's everything's properly designed, and then you can start the next step. So next step is your models. That's I said the requirement parts. That's I said in my presentation. This is the requirements only for handling or to managing or to monitoring the logging process. That means if you are working as, like, think about if you are a company, then there is all employees need to be logged in the systems, that they has the information, that username, password, and then it has a specific define which part of the information he can control, he can see it, they can see it, and this is the information, this is the service, we try to do this one. So that means this is the service only for the logging handling, logging mechanism handling. So if I go to this here, so it is very simple models. It has the type of gender, it has ID, and this is the most important annotation. That is hash maps or hash tables, and that doesn't matter. This is annotation, and it's automatically Redis build one specific object or instance of the user registration models or ORMs, the object relation or JPA model, or how can I say? So then it has some ID and some genders. It has a gender types and username, address ID, first name, last name, middle name, and user registration name, its password, full name, when the user created, and then when the last time user modified. And this is the one of them. This is the list of user role. That means one user has many roles. Let's say user X has role admin, and user head has some role for the execution, for the executives. That means the user role. So that means I say very simple logging application, logging mechanism, REST API. Just they can call it, they can use it. This APIs to build the logging mechanism with the web application. They build a front end, call the service, and do the operations. What they need, they can create, they can update, they can delete, and they can do what you like to do. Maybe they can do some projection queries, complex queries to get the history of the systems, like how often they modify, when the user created, some password changing, those history log you can even do. We do these logging mechanism, these APIs. You can extend this API to do this very specific jobs for like statistical reporting purposes. You can use it also. So if I go to the user role models, you see the user role models exactly the same. That is hash maps and then user role, and it has its own entity like ID, user ID, username, user type, and then when the user created, and then this is very simple super constructor, and then standard getter and setters. If you don't like it, the standard getter and setter, then you just use the lambda, Lombok, lambda Lombok Lombok dependency. Like you can set the getter and setter. For this case, we didn't use it, but you can even do use it Lombok dependency, and then we don't write down all the getter and setter. But this is the very simple standard getter and setter. Just click it and generate. You can say source and generate the getter and setter, and that's all. That's all. You can select all the variables and then create the getter and setter as a public, and then so on and so forth. It works. This is very simple getter and setter, nothing more here. So we defined our entity models, our user registration itself, all the attribute, and has a one-to-many role linking, the list of roles, and that role has its own entity sets. That means it is one-to role is independent, it's linked to the user registration process, and one user has many roles. That's our requirements, and this is the specification. So our model job is done. So when your model job is done, then what you need to do, then you second step, you need to define your package like repository package, then you do the your repository jobs. So I will go to the repository. So it's a very simple CRUD repository, nothing more special. Just we extend the CRUD repository with the your specific repository, and it's depending which repository type. It's JPA paging and sorting repository, CRUD repository, or JPA repository, or other database specifically. One example like Redis, the Cassandra has its own Cassandra repository. Elasticsearch has Elastic repository, and Mongo has a Mongo repository. So you can also use the database specific repository, but standard repository like that, CRUD repository, and then paging and sorting repository, and then JPA repository, depending what type of repository you try to use it, depending on your use cases. Just it's free for you. So we're using here the user registration repository. We extend the CRUD repository, and that's all finished. And then you have it's exactly the same, just like we use the extra flags for here. Repository REST resources, just like define the default the possibility, how can you expose directly without any implementation of